I've been waiting 20 years for new Budokai Tenkaichi, and Sparking Zero is that game. There are some glaring issues that I think we need to talk about respectfully in order to make sure that this game meets everyone's expectations. And I truly do mean everyone. So if you disagree or agree with any of my points, feel free to leave a comment and I'll try to rebound your opinion. Because if you didn't see, a few weeks ago, Bandai shouted out my channel and it was such a surreal feeling. And still is. But it doesn't mean I can't still address the issues with the game and try to make it better for all of us by giving an honest critique on how the game can be improved. I've seen a lot of comments on other creators' content and my own about how the game isn't as good as Xenoverse, how the game should or shouldn't be balanced. Even players blaming character choice. They say things like, don't use Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta or Super Vegito, Android 19, the list goes on. To be clear, I think you should use whatever character you want. There's nothing wrong with wanting to use the strongest character in the canon versus someone who only wants to play Krillin. That's their choice, and that's your choice. The game does need balancing. And stop. I see what you're doing right now. I see you go into the comment section about a comment how you think that the game doesn't need to be balanced and needs to be an unbalanced mess, just like Budokai Tenkaichi 3. And I agree with you. Hear me out. Nerf and buffs are something that is inevitable. We can't stop that. Especially when it comes to things that are broken in the game, bugged, they're going to want to fix those things. An example is Yajirobe. Yajirobe was not playing as intended, and so they quickly addressed it. Or the modern versus classic situation where there was a bug where people's controllers weren't working correctly and they fixed it. This is the correct way to address things when you hear the community's outcries about issues. And Bandai has been doing a great job addressing those issues. But when you look at the game overall, there are a lot of balancing issues when even comparing to Budokai Tenkaichi 3. Tends to be the fallback of everybody who doesn't want balancing changes. And I do agree with you that the game should be very similar to Budokai Tenkaichi 3. So let's look at Budokai Tenkaichi 3, which tends to be the reference for how the game should play. Because a lot of people in my comments tend to call it an unbalanced game. Let's start off looking at something like instant sparking. In this example, I'll be using classic mode. And you can see in both games, you can use same button presses to go to instant sparking mode. But instant sparking mode allows you chain infinite punches, mash square, chain supers and ultimate. But there's one feature missing that's key. We need to talk about the lack of features that are making these characters unbalanced, like ki sickness. Ki sickness, for a lack of better terms, doesn't allow you to charge up as fast as you were before with your ki. So when idle, you don't charge as fast, but also when manually pressing the charge button, you also charge your ki slower. And this is a ideal side effect to using your instant sparking buff. A lot of characters have instant sparking buffs that also give you other buffs, and they carry over even further into after you're done sparking. Say you get a combo off, you use your ultimate. In Sparking Zero right now, your buffs stay with you. But in Budokai Tenkaichi 3, usually when you use your ultimate, those buffs go away. Now, is that for every single character? No. However, that was a balancing choice. You can also look at things like dashing. Dashing in Budokai Tenkaichi 3 does not consume as much ki, and you definitely did move a lot faster and had less ground to cover because the maps were smaller. In Sparking Zero, the maps are much larger and you have a lot more ground to cover, but it consumes a lot more ki when dashing, especially when short dashing. Personally, I think we shouldn't have a short dash ki consumption. I think short dashing should be no ki consumption or minimal ki consumption. Along with the Dragon Dash being an increased speed, because right now it is just not fast enough. Most of us rely on holding down the charge button and tapping twice to do the Dragon Dash homing, I believe it's called, where you instantly zip to the character because you're going to use that much ki anyways to travel to the person. You might as well dash all the way there, making the normal Dragon Dash almost obsolete. The only time it's really used now is when chaining combos. And these are just a few of the very points that I want to make Sparking Zero feel more balanced. The community tends to be right about games when it comes to what they want. Not all the time. I have no problem admitting that every game community has few outliers who are the loudest, who are asking for things that just don't need to be added. In these cases, there are some issues. We have a lot of features that were added to this game, like the revenge counter. The revenge counter is a great addition that is like a last resort use that costs some skill points. On the other hand, Vanish Wars have lost one of their most valuable assets and that is the Vanish War ending. Because if you don't know, in Budokai Tenkaichi 3, you would go into a button mashing frenzy where you would have to hit whatever button is on screen first before the opponent does, and then you would win that clash, and there'd be, I think, a total of 6 of them. I could be misremembering that. That would determine who wins the Vanish War. However, in Sparking Zero, that is absent. It's not in the game. And I would really like to see that be added because, one, it would make Vanish Wars a little more entertaining. Right now, they are very long, especially on the higher levels, and don't take a lot of skill. The window to actually input a Vanish is very, very long. So take that as you will. I know a lot of people might disagree with Vanish Wars being easy. Just continue to stay with me where I say, if you want it to be like Budokai Tenkaichi 3, then let's make it more like Budokai Tenkaichi 3 and match the things that helped balance the game. Another issue that's going on is talked about really well in this video from Lotus is about the Z counter, which I'm gonna just play a clip of it right now for you where he's interviewing our friend Dom, or Voxelize. If you haven't seen him, check him out. He's a amazing player and I actually want to spectate him in the future. So let me know if you guys are interested in that down in the comment section for, you know, spectating pro players in Sparking Zero. There are really no downsides to using the Z counter versus a Vanish War. And people can continuously vanish against your Z counter and doesn't consume as much ki, along with an easier input for a lot of people where you just flick up and hit square. Now, there is a tight window to do that, but when you get good at it, it's really not that hard. You could do it endlessly and win every Vanish War. You might say that's a balancing thing, and great that there's an alternative. At the higher level, people are starting to only use Z counter instead of Vanish, causes a whole new issue of, let's call it still a Vanish War, lasting way longer. But let's let Lotus and Dom talk about it right here in this clip.
The resource cost can be a little bit of a slippery slope. I think they'd have to actually play around that wisely because, for example, let's say I'm getting comboed and then I super counter and that takes X amount of my key bar and then you vanish. That vanish has to take more than the super counter. Otherwise, there's no reason for me to super counter.
Right.
Because you're going to be losing the Vanish War by default since you're using ki to get the super counter. So if I have more ki than you and I aggress you and I win the neutral, you're just going to get looped in the same way that's currently happening.
That's a really good point that I never actually considered because, again, because of the strength of mechanic, I was like, yeah, super counter should cost like 2-3 bars, which I'm just talking, and that's obviously a lot. But I didn't even think of that because like vanishing is so cheap, and super counter can obviously easily be vanished. So yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. So I think to compensate for this, what I wrote down is that super counter, I said reduce leniency during hit stun. Whether or not they implement that is obviously up to them because I'm not sure whether or not they want to make it more difficult to do. But if they don't want to do that, then I would say that a super counter should not be vanishable. So at like face value, this might seem kind of weird, but if you get hit by the super counter and it does take some sort of meter, then that should just be it. Like it's a combo breaker and that's it. There's no counterplay to the combo breaker. Generally speaking, in traditional fighters, you can bait out combo breakers. Like in Strive, obviously, you can like burst bait and whatnot. But in this game, I think that baiting out a super counter that costs meter would be sort of difficult to implement, at least with the current game mechanics. So that in such a way that if you do vanish it, it shouldn't be something that you get rewarded for. Like if super counter costs more meter than vanishing, then there's no point in super countering, right? But at the same time, if you can't vanish a super counter, then okay, they get their combo breaker, it's a reset to neutral, you have more ki, you can still play more offensively than they can.
That also then effectively puts an end to the Vanish War, because if you can just successfully just super counter the Vanish, then
it's a neutral reset.
Yeah, I like that a lot. See, you know what I'm saying? He be thinking what he be thinking, you feel me?
Yeah, and I think, I guess as an aside, because obviously the topic of our conversation isn't about the Vanish / Z counter, but the Z counter, if that change is made, then I guess as a nuance to that, the Vanish Wars can just happen in such a way that you vanish something. So for example, if they do a vanishing strike, you just vanish behind them and that's it. There's no extra hit that causes the Vanish War to engage, right? Like, so I press X square, you vanish it, as in you time the input, and then you just vanish it and you go behind me. Simple as that.
I think Sparking Zero has the potential to be one of the best fighting games out there. And no, I don't mean one of the most competitive. One of the ones that help us relive our childhood. And with things like Daima coming in the future and Superhero, we have the potential to have every single character we could want to play possible. in this game. Yes, there are some missing, like androids 13 and 14 or android 17, and the list can go on. You could talk about Dragon Ball characters. Overall, this is the foundation for a amazing game, and I hope to see it last for a long time, because up till a few months ago, I was still playing Budokai Tenkaichi 3. So seeing people comment that this game is an unbalanced mess just like Budokai Tenkaichi 3 kind of rubbed me a little bit of the wrong way, because it's not exactly. I think Budokai Tenkaichi 3 had more balancing than ever. And you can hear the argument from Budokai Tenkaichi 3 pros feel the same way, that this game isn't as competitive as the last. And who knows, maybe I'll bring some of those guys on, like Grandmaster Hawk. If you guys are interested in hearing their thought, let me know again in the comment section. But now I have one ask for you guys real quick, and that's to hit the subscribe button. We're getting very close to 40,000 subscribers, and I am trying so hard to make this channel be my full-time job. So every subscribe helps a ton, and you can expect a lot more content if I'm full-time. So I appreciate you guys. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and let's get a constructive conversation going down in the comment section, because my last video where we did this, there were some great comments